Welcome back. In this video, we're going to take care of this little button up here, this triple button, which will then pop up at this area right here. So this, in order to achieve it, we will need the modal bottom sheet layout. Okay, so this will then pop up or allow us to pop up this area down here. So this is sheet content that we are going to define. So this is a composable that we're going to build, but it is part of our modal bottom sheet layout. Okay, so let's achieve that. And I want to open that up once I click on those three dots at the app bar, the top bar, but I will only be able to show those here. Let me see. So that's the bottom bar, then we have the top bar, and currently we only have one icon, right? That's the menu icon that we have in our iteration of the application. So if we go back to our app, you see we only have this account icon, but then we also want to add this other icon there and want to give it a clickable event. So I'm going to, however, set up the modal bottom sheet layout first. So there's this thing called modal bottom sheet layout, which present a set of choices while blocking interactions with the rest of the screen. They are an alternative to inline menus and simple dialogues, providing additional room for content, iconography, and actions. So let's use that. So the sheet content we need to define. So here, that's what the sheet should look like. So the content of the sheet, so to speak. But then we also need to make sure that we opt into experimental material API on main view, which we now do. So we add this opt-in here at the top, and then we can go ahead and define its content. So what should the modal bottom sheet layout be as, or have as a sheet content? And I'm going to call this one more bottom sheet, which I'm going to pass in a modifier. So now what is this? Well, the thing is, we're going to need to define this thing ourselves, and that will be a new composable. So at composable.fun or fun and more bottom sheet layout. And this bottom sheet will require a modifier. So I'm basically saying, hey, you can say how I should look like. So basically how, like, yeah, the modifier, you know what the modifier is. Changing the padding and so forth. So this should be a box. Okay, now this box, we need to import the function box, and the modifier should be by default using modifier dot fill max width, as well as set a height of 300 density pixels and have a background of whatever the material is. So material theme dot colors dot primary surface. So depending on dark mode, light mode. And then that is basically, if we go back here, that is this thing that is 300 pixels high. That's what I've set up. And now I want to have these three entries: icon, text. So a column with a row that has an icon and a text, another row, icon and text, row, icon and text. So let's set up that column here with a modifier being modifier.padding 16 dp. So a little bit of space. Let me import this function column. Then the column needs an content, and I will also make sure that the vertical arrangement is space between. So here arrangement dot space between. And now the column will have a row as its contents. Now this row will have the two icons, right? Well, icon and text, as I said earlier. So now I'm going to pass a modifier here first, which will be modifier padding. And the padding of the row should also be 16 density pixels. And then inside of it, I'm going to have an icon with a modifier, which will go towards having a padding at the right-hand side, which will be end of a DP. And then I'm going to set the painter resource, or let's call it painter, which is the name of the painter resource. So painter is going to be painter resource with ID of r.drawable. And IC, let me see. Yeah, we need to import R here. Let's import class R. And you know what? I'm just going to use any icon here. So IC account, for example, or yeah, we call it settings. So maybe I should actually use settings here, which we haven't set up. So we need to create a new drawable. So here, plus vector asset, drawable, and here settings. Let's see. Yeah, this one here. Baseline settings 24 is what I'm going to use now. So dot baseline settings 24 is going to be the icon. And then finally, we also need a content description, which I'm just going to say is going to be settings. Okay, so that is part one. So icon number one. And then we needed a text, which I'll just say is text with settings as its text. And the font size is going to be 20 SP and the color will be white. So color equals color.white. Now let's import SP. And at this point, we should have our first row for our bottom or more bottom sheet. Okay, so I'm just going to leave the other two out for now. I'm just going to use this more bottom sheet. Let's make sure we have that as the content here, where I'm passing the modifier of my modal bottom sheet. Now this modal bottom sheet, let's make sure that it has content. And the content of the modal bottom sheet should have or should be our entire scaffold. So I'm putting in the entire scaffold, including this account dialog and the navigation. All of that should be inside of the modal bottom sheet layout. So inside of its curly brackets. And in order for this to work, I need to set up my modifier. So let's go ahead and create a variable, and we're going to create a bunch of variables up here. So I'm just going to create a modifier. Val modifier is going to be if is sheet full screen, which will be a variable that we also need to set up. Then I want the modifier to be modifier dot fill max size. And otherwise, so in the else block, I'm gonna say it's going to be modifier dot fill max width. Okay, so max width. Let me see, it should be with a lower f. So now we need this variable is sheet full screen. So this will be a remember state. So val is sheet full screen is going to be by remember, and it will be a mutable state of a boolean. So I'm going to set that to false by default, and here fill max width should be set for our modifier. All right, and while we are up here, let's also take care of our modal sheet state. So there is this thing called modal sheet state, which is similar to the scaffold state that we've seen before, scaffold state. We need to know what the state of our modal sheet is in order for it to update the user interface correctly. So this will be a remember bottom, remember modal bottom sheet state. There we are. And here we can pass an initial value, which will be something where I'm going to use modal sheet value, this one here, dot hidden. So by default, I want it to be hidden. And now let me see why that is not happy here. Am I using the right remember modal bottom sheet state? It seems like I'm using a different one. I want to use the one that has the initial value, which comes from Android X composed material, not the material 3 variant, which it automatically gave me. And that will also have a confirm value change, which I will be given, and I can say is not going to be modal bottom sheet value half expanded. So that will be a Boolean, you see here on confirm value change, and I'm just saying, hey, it should be the opposite of half expanded here, or whatever it is. So we're comparing is it, which is a modal bottom sheet value. We're comparing that with whether it's half expanded or not. And if it's not half expanded, then this will be true. So on confirm value change. And if it is half expanded, then it will be false. And then if you look at it, we see it also has rounded corners. So if you want to achieve that, you need to use val rounded corner radius, where I'm going to say if it's full screen, then it should be 0 density pixels and else 12 density pixels. So basically I'm saying, hey, if you're not on full screen mode, don't show this thing anyways, but then also set the rounded corner radius to 0, but otherwise set it to 12. Okay, now at this point we can modify our modal bottom sheet layout. So far we only had the content. Now we can also give it the state. So here we can say sheet state should be our modal sheet state. Then the sheet shape, there we can use the rounded corner shape with the top start, so the left hand side, to be our rounded corner radius, and the top end, which will be the right hand side, we can also say rounded corner radius. Okay, so at this point, let's just give it a try and see if we missed anything. I now realize what we did miss, and that's the three icons, or the three dot icon at the top right side of our top bar. So we are going to have to modify our top bar. We need another icon there. So far we only have the account circle there, so we need to change that. And we can achieve that up here, where we create a action like so, which then needs a row scope, which we can use as where we can use the icon buttons. Okay, so I would say let's do that in the next video and then finalize this project. So see you there.